Welcome to the Survival Handbook 2.0, a series that will take you through every aspect of Ark, from picking a map to play on, all the way up to mutations, tech, bosses, and everything in between. This is the third episode of many where we'll be talking about the 10 creatures I believe every player needs, starting with beginner tames and ending with challenging and powerful tames that you'll use for the duration of your playthrough. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss the helpful tips and tricks coming from the rest of the series, and if you want to catch more Ark content, make sure to find me live at twitch.tv/pterafier official, where I stream every day. The Maywing is probably the best early tame in the game because of its insane mobility, its ability to harvest berries and fiber at a crazy rate, and the fact that it can nanny your babies for you. They're pretty much all over the map on Genesis 2, and on Lost Island they spawn in the eastern plains where the biggest danger is Sarcos and raptors. On Fjordur they're a bit more difficult because they only spawn in the redwoods, which is a notoriously dangerous area, and Asgard, which has a 50-50 shot at being super safe or super deadly. The reason I'm suggesting a Maywing as one of your first tames is because as soon as you get your hands on a refining forge and smelt some metal ingot, you can unlock their saddle. These are super easy knockout tames if you have access to the net gun, but if not, then you should get a low level Maywing at first because they like to jump away and are hard to keep up with. A low level means a quick knockout. After your first Maywing though, they become a lot easier to chase down. They're ridiculously fast and will definitely be your main transportation throughout the game. When you start raising babies, which is a topic we'll talk about in a later episode, you can put the babies in its saddle, turn on feeding, and let the Maywing act as a feeding trough until the babies are old enough to actually use the feeding trough. This is pretty impressive, especially if you're on console, because you don't have mods to help you with that. Additionally, if you spam secondary fire around some berry plants, you'll get a ton of berries. If you activate the secondary move and then spam primary fire, you'll get a ton of fiber. This takes a bit to get right, but once you have it, you'll never need another creature for fiber or berries again. Next up is the Andrewsarcus. Currently, this creature can only be found on Fjordur, but they spawn right next to loads of honey, which is what you'll need in order to tame them. The taming method on an Andrewsarcus is a bit strange. You'll have to entice it with some honey, then while it's eating the honey, jump on its back and move along with the arrows that pop up. Make sure to jump off before this rage meter fills up, otherwise you'll be kicked off and the piggy will try to kill you. If you jump off in time though, just repeat the process again and again until it's tamed. You can ride them without a saddle, so if you're on Fjordur, this will likely be your first tame. Andrewsarcus can drift around corners really well, turbo boost to max speed, defend you relatively well when necessary, and later on you'll be able to attach a turret to their back for a mobile death machine. The Monarchy actually use these guys to beat Fjordur's boss, so make sure you check that out if you're interested in these creatures. They're super fun, easy tames that you should consider getting before anything else, as they'll likely help you with the rest of your early game tames. At number 3 is the Ankylosaurus. I picked the Ankylosaurus because they're the best metal farmer in the game before the Magmasaur, which you can't utilize until level 95. Ankies carry metal with a 75% weight reduction to raw metal, meaning you can carry 3 times as much metal than if you were to use any other creature. You'll typically see these paired with Argies to go out and collect thousands of metal, which is the best way to get metal until you get the Magmasaur. Even without their ability to farm metal though, Ankies are incredibly easy knockout tames. They're super slow so you won't need a trap, but once you tame them, they can defend you against a surprising number of creatures. Not only that, but they can also collect berries more efficiently than you can with your hands, and they can harvest metal automatically up to 50% of their weight capacity. This is super useful for gathering metal solo with an Argie. It makes the first few nodes super fast and easy to collect. Beyond that though, you'll have to drop the Anky and collect the metal by riding it. A minor inconvenience for sure, but their saddle unlocks at level 36, earning them a spot as one of the best early game tames available. In the same vein of spiky-tailed creatures is the Dodicarus, which is the next creature on the list. The Dodicarus is a relatively easy knockout tame for exactly the same reasons as the Anky. The difference is if they take too much damage, they'll curl up into a ball and take significantly less damage. So little damage, in fact, that you probably won't be able to knock them out. So you have to be efficient with your shots and make sure you're trying to tame a full health Dodicarus. The only reason I recommend Dodix is because of their ability to gather stone. Much like the Anky's reduction of weight for raw metal, the Dodic reduces weight for stone. They're the best stone gatherer out there, in my opinion, which is super useful for those early game stone bases. Even in the mid and late game, you can grind stone into flint to help you make spark powder, which can then be crafted into gunpowder for all sorts of useful items. The Dodic will actually auto-harvest stone up to 50% of its weight capacity if you put it on wandering, which is super helpful too. I generally use this functionality to pair it with an RG so I can get superior mobility and control. Its saddle unlocks at level 34, so this is another spiky-tailed friend you should consider getting ASAP. The next creature I think every player should have is an Argentivist. This is an intermediate knockout tame that will help you with the majority of the farming that needs to be done in Ark, in addition to being a great protector. They're super slow but have a massive weight stat and a ton of stamina, making them great for long journeys with lots of supplies. The RG has a 50% weight reduction for black pearls, crystal, metal, metal ingots, obsidian, organic polymer, crafted polymer, and stone. So Argies are pretty vital for rare resource collection. Additionally, their saddles act as mobile smithies, so if you're out collecting some crystal with a metal pick and it breaks, as long as you have the supplies with you, you can repair it and continue to farm. Honestly though, that's not how most players utilize the Argie. The Argie is mainly used as a sort of taxi for Ankies and Doedics during metal and stone runs. Because of the Argie's incredible weight stat and their ability to carry both of these creatures around, plus the obvious ability to fly, they're easily the best mount to accelerate metal and stone collection. You can overload an Anky with thousands of raw metal, and the Argie won't have an issue flying it back at full speed. Their saddle unlocks at level 62, so make sure you get there as soon as possible. These guys are vital. Next up is the Desmodis Draculae, which can only be found on Fjordur currently. The Desmodis is one of the newest creatures brought to Ark, and it's insanely useful for a variety of reasons. Firstly, it can go invisible, making it go undetected by wildlife. This is helpful for loot runs, easy access to artifacts, and just general safety. Additionally, they can hang onto walls without losing stamina, and because you can fire weapons from their back, it turns some encounters into a breeze, specifically Hati and Skull on Fjordur. It can also lifesteal from any creature it attacks while collecting blood packs that you can turn into its most useful utility, a Sanguine Elixir. The Sanguine Elixir is an absolute game changer. No matter what you're taming, if you consume a Sanguine Elixir next to the creature you're taming, it will automatically gain a free 30% tame charge, reducing the time and resources it takes to tame something like a Giga, or honestly, anything else. In addition to collecting blood packs for Sanguine Elixirs, it also harvests spoiled meat at a ridiculous rate, helping with narcotics for those mega tames you'll get in the late game. The Desmodis' ability set makes it one of the most useful creatures in all of Ark, but it does have a bit of a strange taming method. What works for me is to just collect a few dozen blood packs without a Desmodis, and just put them in your inventory and let a Desmodis grab you. It's gonna fly you into the air, and as long as you keep blood packs in your inventory, it will eat those instead of draining your health, which will increase the taming meter. After a while, it'll drop you, meaning you'll have to parachute down. In this clip, I just got passed around by all three Desmodis, which would have killed me had I not been in creative mode, so you gotta make sure you're only dealing with one at a time, or they'll kill you pretty quickly. Anyway, repeat the process until it's tamed. There are a ton of guides on how to increase its taming effectiveness, so I won't get into that here, but its saddle unlocks at level 74. These are a super fun and useful tame that you should strive for immediately. Next on the list is the Dodicarus. The Dodicarus is a really scary and frankly kind of annoying dino that will scare your tames and make them lose control and run blindly. The Dodicarus is extremely important to have though, because its eggs will help you make extraordinary kibble, which is the best kibble available and will help you tame creatures quickly and efficiently. Besides its extraordinary egg laying capabilities though, the Udi is used as a support in boss fights. It has a courage roar that will boost allies damage up to 25% and reduce their damage taken by 20%, as well as a fear roar which debuffs enemies, causing them to take up to 50% more damage. That's huge. You'll often see Udis courage roaring during PvP raids, or more commonly in boss fights to help their main damage dealers stay alive. You're gonna have to use extreme caution to lure them into a trap though, not only because of their fear roar, but because a Udi's courage roar will force nearby Carnos to fight for them. I have a video on the Udi that will help you tame it if you're interested, and I do recommend it as it provides some very viable strategies. Its saddle unlocks at level 80, which is fitting for its difficulty. Next up, we've got everybody's favorite carnivore, the Rex. The Rex is an obvious choice for several reasons. It has a big health pool, it does a lot of damage, and its roar makes other creatures poop. But in all honesty, tanking damage and dealing damage are really the only things Rexes are good for. They do those things really well though, which is why they're the most common pick for boss fights. There are usually 20 dino slots available for bosses, and you'll typically see Rexes take up about 18 of those spots. Even with their massive health pools, Rexes need to have really good saddles to survive a boss fight. Saddles can provide a ton of armor to a creature, so pair that with the Udi's courage roar and you've got yourself a great strategy for boss fights. The other obvious use for Rexes is meat and hide, along with just general base defense. Captain Fat Dog has one of the cheapest and easiest to use traps I've ever seen for a Rex, so definitely make sure to check that out before getting your first one. The Rex saddle unlocks at level 74, and once you beat some bosses, you can actually unlock a tech saddle for these guys that will shoot lasers. Do with that what you will. The next dino you should consider taming is a Deodon. Deodons are the final piece to the boss party puzzle, acting as the final support that will glue everything together. Deodons have an AoE healing ability that will help mitigate some of the damage your Rexes will take from boss fights. This ability unfortunately burns through the Deodon's hunger stat like a Hummer on a hot day, so you'll need to keep it stocked up with as much food as you can, otherwise the healing will stop. Deodons are good for more than just boss fights though. They can help you raise babies that you don't have food for. For example, Wyverns can't eat meat until the juvenile state. Instead, they only eat Wyvern milk until then. Wyvern milk can be very difficult to get if you're not ready for it yet, so you can just use a Deodon Deodon to heal up the baby while it starves. It does seem cruel, and if this were real life, it absolutely would be, but fortunately, this is a completely viable mechanic that actually works really well. The only other creature that can heal like this is a snow owl, and as a matter of fact, the snow owl is probably better for healing up a baby wyvern because it can only heal a single target at a time. I'm getting ahead of myself though. You'll definitely want to use a Deodon for almost every boss, so make sure you breed a few of them. Their saddle unlocks at level 59. Last but not least, we have the Wyvern. The Wyvern is a creature you'll have and use for the duration of your time on the Ark from the moment you have it. Wyverns are ultra powerful, relatively fast flyers that can dominate most creatures on most Arks. I use them to kill mantis in the desert and volcano regions for organic polymer, and honestly for pretty much everything else in dangerous areas. I know a few people that use Wyverns to go on cementing paste runs on PvP servers so they can protect themselves or get away if they're ambushed, but I'm not a PvP guy, so I can't really speak too much on that. But what I do know is that wherever I go with a Wyvern, I know I'm just about as safe as I can get. The problem is that Wyverns are susceptible to net guns, which is also a massive benefit for getting your hands on a Wyvern. You can't knock out tame Wyverns, but you can get their eggs. Their eggs are in Wyvern trenches though, where you'll be face to face with potentially dozens of Wyverns. I use a Pteranodon, Griffin, or Maywing to get in and get out of Wyvern trenches because those three creatures can outrun Wyverns. The reason you'd want to net gun a Wyvern though is to get Wyvern milk or to escape. You can get Wyvern milk by knocking out a female, which is the way I recommend, or by killing an alpha Wyvern. You'll need Wyvern milk in order to raise the Wyvern from its egg state. You don't need a saddle for a Wyvern, which means you could ride it from level 1, but you'd have all the difficulties of raising it from level 1, which is extremely impractical, but I guess you could do it. Don't forget to find me live at twitch.tv/Pterafier official, where I stream every day, and if you found this content helpful, please consider subscribing. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye!